The funny thing about, real funny about them is that they are they're the most long, tenacious of life thing that there is. They say an alligator is never dead until it's been skinned and the skin tacked up on the wall. That they would. One of the tales in this one of these books I have was this guy, they killed a great big alligator, and of course the natives knew, the native trackers and all, they wouldn't touch it or anything. Anyway, they finally threw enough lines on there and drug it out of the water and up on the bank. And so they went up, you know, with a big African rifle and blew that sucker's brains to smithereens. There was nothing left, you know, of his head. It was gone, just the whole big part of his head. And so anyway, seemed like they cut part of his head off and then decided, you know, it was time they had to fix up or eat. It was ready right then. So they left the gator and moved over here the crocodile. And the buzzards were, you know, the buzzards know the minute anything dies. But anyway, the buzzards had come over. And so anyway, everybody's sitting there eating, the old crocodiles out there. And so they eat and all this, and then they get up to go back to finish skinning it. They had already started skinning it, but they didn't have it totally skinned. The brains and most of the head was gone because they had shot. It was such a monster that they wanted the skin was real acceptable. Okay, here's this sucker out there, and they couldn't figure. Here's the buzzards, but the buzzards were in this big circle around it, looking at it. You know, they wasn't up there. And anyway, they happened to look, and there was a buzzard in the croc's mouth. He had been no brains, partially skinned, dead, shot to pieces, but he still snatched the buzzard because that sucker was in his mouth. And the buzzards, they were standing back. They knew, like, that sucker's plumb dangerous.
Well, we've seen them catch a fish. We would put fish in the pond so that we could fish in there,
yeah,
and catch a fish, and he would hold the fish alive. He would hold the fish in his mouth alive for a long, long time till the fish stopped. And he couldn't. If he opened his mouth, the fish would swim away.
Yeah.
And he'd just have to wait till the fish died before he'd start to eat it. But he'd have a death grip. And opening an alligator's mouth is impossible.
You can hold them with your fingers. You can
At the end?
Huge 11-foot alligator with your fingers or with
On
your
the
hands.
lips, on
the
But you can't hold it open.
Yeah.
You can't hold it open. You can hold it shut, but you can't hold it open.
Crocodiles can bend bars, metal, huge iron bars. You can just bend them, stick them in their mouth and bend them. They have like a few thousand pounds of pressure whenever you fight. And they break
That was the first thing Nick
the leg
Nick did
bones
when
of
he caught.
cows
Yeah.
and buffaloes, and they've been known to eat holes and fences and stuff.
Another alligator thing that this alligator, you know, we have these turtles at home. We call them gophers, but they're not those little furry things. They're like big old, you know, things with
We have
shells.
turtles, but we call them gophers.
We do call them.
Yeah, they're
Why?
gopher
Is there a name for that?
I don't know why they call them gophers.
I mean, you know,
we have
there is
gophers.
gophers.
Do
You know,
have
we
gophers?
have gophers, but they're not turtles.
Oh, I know.
They're real gophers.
Your gophers are furry, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I
And
don't
they're
know.
rodents.
That's what surprised me. I don't know why y'all call your fur things gophers, because they're really turtles at home.
Yeah, no, your furry things at home are moles.
No,
We have those too. We have moles too.
Yeah.
But
Moles
these,
never come up.
but these turtles are the gophers that I'm talking about are land gophers, and they dig holes in the ground, and they don't live by water. They live on the land. They live in
Eating
sand.
grass and that gives them water.
And they eat berries and grass, and they go around and they dig holes. So, and whenever they get scared, they close their shell, but they cannot pull up their legs in. They can shut it up, but they can't get them all the way in. So a dog, if he's determined, can eat their legs off. So our dog got a gopher, and so we went out to.
No.
Our dog got this gopher and had eaten its legs off, and the gopher was still alive, but you know there was still enough of him inside the shell, so he was still alive. So he is suffering, you know, with all of his legs eaten off and everything. So we figure we'll feed the alligator because this is, fresh meat. So we took the gopher down and we put him on
Turtle
the feeding
meat.
platform
Not gopher.
where it's a cement place where the alligator was used to us throwing food in, and he'd jump up there and get it and take it down in the water. So he came up and he looked at it, and he'd open his mouth, and he could figure out how to get his mouth around a chicken, but he'd go like this, try to grab the shell, and he had a lot of trouble.
There's a design to turtle shells, I think, where they can't get it's not
Good
flat,
grip.
it's round,
But it
and when they
took him
bite it,
a
it goes to the top of their mouth instead of on their teeth.
And that's uncomfortable
And
for them.
You're right, they don't like it, they can't really bite into it, but they can scratch it all up. In the Okefenokee Swamp, they have, the turtles swimming around with big
Scars
on their backs from where they get a good bite at them, but they can't eat them. It's really tough to do that.
He really had a real hard time, but he could smell that blood, and he knew this was something really good to eat. So he kept on. We watched him a long time trying to figure out how to get that turtle in his mouth.
Determined.
Finally, he got the turtle, and here that hard shell. Crash! You hear all the cracking, all that shell cracking. He went right down to the water with it. So he felt crack a turtle shell like nobody's business. If he can
Oh,
figure out
that'd
how
be
to
hard to
grab it.
do.
Once he gets a grip
Figure out how to get it in his
See if
mouth.
he
Well, it just tore me up one time. You know that time that we came down there to see, when I called Claudia Ray, and I said, Bob and I are in Palm Coast, Florida, visiting Bob's sister June.
And we met you.
And we want to come up and see you on our way out because we're going to Pine Mountain to see Aunt Belle today. So anyway, we met y'all. Well, anyway, right before our trip to Florida, there was a thing on television and in the newspaper where I don't remember all of the details about these 2 or 3 couples of families that were having a picnic out there somewhere, and the kids were all playing somewhere, and they were cousins, and small cousins or something. Anyway, an alligator got 2 of the children, and they got one child away, and the little girl, an alligator carried her off, and they heard her screaming clear across the lake, and her daddy swam and fought the alligator and couldn't get the little girl, and they heard her screaming all the way to her grave. And when I think of an alligator, I just remember that made such an impression on me. I think it was one of the most horrible things that I'd ever heard. And so when I went to Florida, I looked everywhere. I looked on the highway. I looked everywhere for alligators. I was horrified of them.
We saw one.
We saw one. We were going to NASA. We were in the tour bus going to NASA to, see all of all that stuff, and saw one crawl out of a drainage ditch.
They're all around everywhere. But see, that one that got that child was an alligator that had been fed by people. Because up in the Okefenokee Swamp, they are everywhere.
Unless you have a dog in the boat with you,
there's
they're not
not
going to come
one
get you.
case of anybody ever being hurt up there by those alligators. There's not a case that they can document where anybody there has ever
They'll
been hurt.
stop the dog in a New York minute.
They're partial to
There's something about
dogs.
pets.
And we
Most
went-
pets,
there's a
cats, small
camp-
animals,
there's a
they
campground where-
sense them and they can just
There's a
they come right
campground
out
that
of the
we
boat and come right in.
go to in Florida.
They warned you. They say, don't take your pets on the boat.
They will go in a boat after one of them.
Right.
Oh,
Well, see, a bear
Have you
is the
ever heard of
same
that?
way.
Huh?
A bear, if you feed a bear,
heard
They're
that
the most
before.
dangerous.
then they'll come back after you if you don't give them something else. But if you never feed them,
They're not used to begging from people.
Right.
And I bet you any amount of money, this alligator associated people with food, or else he would have been scared. And when he heard voices, he would have gone the other way. And that's why that's why I was terrified of our alligator, because we had the most dangerous kind right in our
The
pond.
worst kind.
The worst kind in our pond,
Right.
because when he heard
The one that ate
people's
the chicken would
voices,
just soon eat you.
just as soon, he
Sure.
does not know the difference. He
He
would have
wouldn't
beaten up
know.
a child.
And
And you
He's
would
not a
never be
pet.
able
That's
to,
why I
Never
was
heard
so
of that.
glad when they were gone.
you would never be able to teach him the difference